Hello, I'm Sally Gardner, and I'm going to read today from my book, The Double Shadow, which is coming out in paperback. Yippee! And I'm going to read from a bit from chapter 2, which is called Basic Education, and the year is 1937. And I do hope the builders don't sort of make the noise, because they've been banging downstairs. So if I can get through this without bangs, I'll be very pleased. Okay, here goes. Advancing on a blue bottle, with a fly squat in her hand, Miss Amos had to acknowledge that the wretched girl had defeated her. Amaryllis's catalogues of crimes had led the headmistress to wander into a puddle of thought, muddy and unclear as it was about the origin of original sin. The first of her misdemeanours, as Miss Amos called them, had occurred shortly after Amaryllis had arrived at the school. The girl had made a tidy sum of money giving midnight lessons in a dormitory on the art of love-making. This had only come to light when a junior had fainted after being shown a collection of Parisian naughty nudes from the 1900s. The idiot creature had fallen off her bed and broken her arm. On coming to, she had given the game away. Amaryllis said without an ounce of embarrassment that she had found the postcards in an old shoebox of her father's. As for the facts of life, that was simple. She had sent away for a copy of Mary Stopes' book on married love, much more informative than Mr. Willis's Sheep. Thinking of it now made Miss Amos shudder. The misdemeanour was serious enough to get the new girl expelled, and she would have been, had it not been for the charismatic charm of her father. The second misdemeanour was of a more significant proportion. Amaryllis had burnt down the biology laboratory on purpose, so she said, to see if the experiment with the magnifying glass would work. On that occasion, Miss Amos and the school governors had been forced into forgiveness by the size of Arnold Rudolph's cheque. His gift enabled the building of a new science and art wing. But Amaryllis's latest escapade could not be classified as a misdemeanour. It was impossible to keep the girl at the school a day longer. Last night, the headmistress called Mr. Rubens had been put through to a Mr. Silas Mould. I regret to report, Miss Amos could hardly bring herself to say the girl's name, went missing on a school trip to London. Mr. Mole remained calm. He asked her, not on any account, to involve the police or the press. Miss Amos, shocked by his casual tone, was stunned into silence. What? Asked the remote voice at the end of the line. Did she intend to do when Miss Rubin returned to school? Miss Amos didn't hesitate. She'll be expelled. There was a silence that seemed no more than the click of a pen cap. Is there a sum of money that might make you reconsider? Miss Amos pursed her thin lips, and beads of sweat formed above them. The school motto stared down at her. To serve one's country, to do one's duty, to obey the word of the Lord. No, this must be the end of the matter. There was a long silence, in which the line crackled, and Miss Amos was on the point of thinking that she had been disconnected, when Mr. Mole said in a disinterested tone, A car will be sent for her tomorrow. But, said Miss Amos indignantly, what if she doesn't return? The phone went dead. That morning, just after assembly, a handsome man in an evening dress entered her study unannounced, followed by a dazzling beauty of a woman, full lips, hair perfectly couturied, and was wearing a silver dress, a mirage shimmering into a mermaid's tail. The vision, for there was no other word to describe her, quite discombobulated Miss Amos. The business card the man handed her read, Maurice Sands, entrepreneur. Miss Amos turned the card over. How can I help you? She asked, brought back the wanderer. His accent was so unexpected she hardly listened to a word he was saying. The wanderer? Inquired Miss Amos. I'll come off it. Amaryllis. Miss Amos, unused to being addressed in such familiar tone, was quite at a loss as to what to say when the bluebottle noisily made its entrance into the room and headed straight for her. Flapping her hands, she tried in vain to squat it away. The young woman gently swaying back and forth. "This is Miss Rubens," said Morris Sands. Miss Amos was still unable to join together the dots that would make this goddess form a picture of a humdrum schoolgirl. "What's your name?" she asked. The goddess burped. "Miss Rubens," she said. And finally the drawing was complete, and the full outrage of the situation hit Miss Amos so hard that she started to tremble. Do you realise, Mr. Sands, that Miss Rubens is just 16 years old and a pupil at this school?" She made to lift the phone. "I am going to call the police and have you arrested for the abduction of a minor." "I think," said Morris Sands, taking a cigarette from a gold case, "you will find that to be very ill-advised. I'm sure Mr. Rubens wouldn't be pleased if you involved the police. He doesn't like scenes." "Are you threatening me?" "Suppose I am," he said, blowing a perfect smoke ring. Miss Amos let go of the receiver. Amaryllis, still swaying slightly, suddenly burst out laughing. Morris Sands, despite himself, began to laugh too. "The girl's drunk," said the headmistress, stating what had been obvious from the start. "High-spirited," said Morris Sands. He put his arms round Amaryllis. She turned and vomited all over him. He jumped back, horrified. "You little cow! My dinner jacket's ruined." "Whoops-a-daisy," said Amaryllis, ghostly pale. "I think you should leave," said Miss Amos, forcefully ringing a handbell. Help was most definitely needed. Morris Sands was mopping his dinner jacket with his handkerchief when Matron entered, followed by a maid. "There's been an accident," said Miss Amos. "If you wouldn't mind showing Mr. Sands the cloakroom." Morris Sands stopped at the door and turned to Amaryllis. "Better behave yourself. You wouldn't want me telling Daddykins what a naughty little girl he has, would you?" Miss Amos waited until the door was finally shut, and returning to the safe fortress of her desk, never for a moment thought to ask what Mr. Sands had meant. She felt there was no more proof needed. The girl was a bad lot. With a deep intake of breath, she began her well-prepared and seldom-used speech. Miss Rubens was a disgrace to the school. Before Miss Amos could reach the coup de grace that Amaryllis was to be expelled, she had already picked up her silver tail and left the room.